Comic Book Savant, episode 379. Welcome back to another episode of Comic Book Savant. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode, I'm going to be doing a comic review or a series spotlight. I haven't really done a ton on the audio podcast because I've been moving over a lot of comic or trade reviews over to the YouTube channel, but there was something I wanted to talk about in a little longer form than what I would do in a video, so I wanted to do it over here, so I hope you guys indulge me and you don't mind. But before I get into all that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. If you like this podcast and you want to find more comic book related podcasts, it's a one-stop shop that you can find literally hundreds of different podcasts that are on and related to comic books. You have podcasts based on publishers, individual characters, teams, you name it. They have it broken down into particular genres of comics. So definitely, if you have a moment, stop by the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. And last but not least, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at dcbservice.com as well as instocktrades.com. InStockTrades.com is one of the best places you can go online for collected editions specifically. And since this is a episode of me doing a review of a trade, this really one of the best places you can go online. You can get discounts as much as 35%, 42%, up to 50% off with their deals of the week. If you place an order that is $50 or more, you get free shipping if you're a U.S.-based customer. If you happen to listen to the show and you're not based in the U.S., don't let that deter you from using the site because they still have some of the best deals and savings you're probably going to find anywhere. And they have some of the most competitive international shipping rates around. So definitely you still want to check out InStockTrades.com. And if you haven't had a chance, check out their comic book ordering service, which is Discount Comic Book Services. The website is dcbservice.com. I'm going to be doing some a video series coming up soon on both InStockTrades.com as well as Discount Comic Book Service. So if you haven't already, go by the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Comic Book Savant. The In-Stock Trades video will be coming out. If it's probably be in the next week or two. My Discount Comic Book Service video will be coming out in June because I'm waiting. I'm going to be doing a massive unboxing and breaking down the service and so forth. So be on the lookout for that. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, definitely do that. Make sure when you subscribe, you click that bell notification to be notified when new videos come through as well. But with all that out of the way, the book that I'm going to be talking about today is Kingdom Come. This was released back in 1996. It was published by DC Comics, written by Mark Waid, artwork done by Alex Ross, lettering done by Todd Klein, and all the covers were painted by Alex Ross as well. Most of, depending on where you enter in to this whole comic book collection, or comic book collecting and comic book reading, some of you might be familiar. Mostly Alex Ross does covers nowadays. This is one of the few occasions that he actually did his painted work on an actual comic series. He does stunning paint work, painstaking, super detailed painting work. He collaborated with Mark Waid not just on Kingdom Come. They kind of did a similar series over at Marvel after Kingdom Come was such a huge hit, and it was called Marvels. And they did a follow-up, which was, I can't remember what the sequel was called. It was Marvels, and it had a subtitle, Eye of something or another. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's not important because mainly we're talking about Kingdom Come in this actual episode. And the original series was collected in a 4-issue extended format. This was an Elseworld story as well, so it wasn't just released as original graphic novel. They were kind of in a prestige format, kind of comic at the time. It had nice like cardstock covers to really accentuate the beautiful painting job that Mark Waid did. Excuse me, not Mark Waid. That Alex Ross did on the covers. And like if you put all the covers together, it made this huge photo of like all the main characters that were in the story. And again, this was an Elseworld story. I'm going to read the breakdown as it reads on the trade. Set at the dawn of the 21st century in a world spinning out of control, Kingdom Come is a riveting alternate reality story pitting the old guard, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and others against a new, uncompromising generation of heroes in a war that will determine the future of the planet. So this was really, really even for 1996, this was really a heavier, kind of darker story. Mark Waid is one of the most, prolific writers in the comic book business, and he still is, to this day, with all the hits that he's done over his career, be it with Marvel, be it with DC, kind of wherever where Mark Waid has gone, he has been successful, as a writer, and this is definitely one of his greatest stories. And, I always have an attachment to it just because it was one of the first graphic novels that I picked up. I didn't pick up the original. I want to say later I picked up at some point I had the four prestige format issues, but I went into a comic shop and I hadn't been in a while, and I picked up the trade. I read it so much that I pretty much it disintegrated. I bought another one, read it some years ago, and they did a Kingdom Come Absolute Edition, which is one of the things that I regret when I got rid of my physical collection that I got rid of, because it was probably, one of the most beautiful Absolute Editions that I've ever had, just because of Alex Ross's artwork blown up. Now, if you guys are not familiar with Absolute Editions, DC does these special oversized printings of like stories they deem as kind of like all-time classic stories. They did one for Kingdom Come. Excuse me. I remember when it was released, I ordered it like the first run printing that it had, and I had. And Absolute Editions, can be kind of pricey. They run like about $100. Well, some they vary the the length of the story. They would have it's kind of like how special edition like a steelbook Blu-ray or movie is nowadays. It was really cool because it was oversized in format, nice bound edition, nice cover. It would have a nice slipcase to it that they would have some special artwork done up for that particular edition. Then it would have notes from the writer, notes from the artist. It would have all these special features packed into the Absolute Editions. They still print them out back then because the Absolute Editions were still kind of relatively new, so they were done way less frequently than they are now. They're done a little bit more frequently nowadays compared to when they were first starting out, like in the around the time I started doing the show, like around 2006, or in the early 2000s, like at 2000s, it was like very selective. It was something they did kind of as a trial, and it kind of took over as a like that signature piece, like that was the signature or absolute, hence the name Absolute rendition that they were going to put out for that particular story, at that given point in time. But like I said, it was one of my prized things. Like if I really had room and would collect, that was probably one of the things I regret the most of things that I got rid of in my physical collection is the Absolute Editions. I own quite a few of them, and they were all stories that I love and that I have a particular attachment to. But that one was stunning. If you can ever get your hands on it, I don't think they ever did a rerun of the Kingdom Come Absolute Edition, so it's probably worth a ton of money now. I'm just speculating on that. I'm not 100% sure. They did a 20th anniversary about 2 years ago. They did 20th anniversary re-release of the graphic novel, of the original graphic novel. But I don't think they ever did a re-release of the Absolute Edition. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I don't see them. And I did a search before I was laying out everything for this episode, and I don't see like where you can just find the Kingdom Come Absolute Edition. So if you ever see it somewhere and you've read the story and you really like it, if it's not too expensive, it's definitely worth picking up in that large format. After reading this story again, this is a story I don't think at any point in time, and I could be wrong because, this is episode 379. I try to be thorough and go back through my notes to make sure when I talk about stuff it's the first time, or if I've talked about it briefly now, I'm expounding upon it, that I've looked back through my notes, but it gets harder and harder when you get to this many episodes and you've talked about so many things. Sometimes certain things slip through the cracks. So if you're a long-time listener, and I have talked about this in detail before, just give me a pass on this one. But it was kind of cool. It was just nagging at me. I was like, I hadn't read Kingdom Come in a long time, and I just sat down, and it was funny because, I guess when I was younger, this is a more dense kind of storytelling. So I remember it took me like forever to read the graphic novel for the first time and digest everything. And I got through it so fast now. It was just like I just had a desire to go back, and read this, post-apocalyptic story. And it was kind of crazy because if anyone has listened to the show, any length of time, is to know that, one of the central characters in this story is Superman. And I've never been a huge fan of Superman. And it's one of the few stories I can go back to when I will talk about favorite stories of Superman as a character. I will tend to go to Superman for All Seasons, Kingdom Come, even, years ago when DC did a thing where they jumped a year ahead in the comics, and it was a storyline. I can't remember what the storyline was, where it was this Clark Kent, and he hadn't had his powers for a year, and he wasn't Superman. It was like the story about him regaining his powers. I cannot remember what that story is, and it's collected in trade. But I love those stories. Because I always felt like Superman is like that perfect character, and he's such a Boy Scout, and it's so hard to write him as a sympathetic, relatable character. When it's done right, those are the stories that I love of Superman. But he's never been like my go-to, like a Batman, or even a Wonder Woman, a Green Arrow, Green Lantern, as far as DC characters that I kind of that I tend to like. But this is one of the stories that internal struggle he goes through. And it, like, when you look at stuff like The Man of Steel, and if you've read this as an Elseworld story and you've read The Dark Knight Returns, you can kind of see where Snyder got his influences on his take on Superman as well as Batman. It's drawn very heavily from these stories if you've ever read them. And if, again, I recommend it highly that you read this story and you read The Dark Knight Returns, because a lot of what Snyder did pulled heavily from these stories. And again, they were never meant to be, canon. They were Elseworld fun stories, one-off stories that were told and put out. Guess I got to get a pop filter. I apologize for the spikes and me popping. I got a new boom arm, but I don't have it. My old pop filter won't work for my mic, so I'm hearing it myself as I'm recording, and I do apologize. That they became a phenomenon all unto themselves. Kingdom Come especially. They did DC went a little crazy. Like, after Kingdom Come came out, it was such a huge hit. They attempted at one point to kind of, even though it was originally an Elseworld story, they tried to take the events from Kingdom Come and kind of shift things in the actual DC universe to reflect to the events of Kingdom Come. They implemented Magog, I think his name was, the kind of leader of the new generation from the story of Kingdom Come. They brought him into the comics, and they had divergent timelines that were trying to shape events to push towards. We were going to get to that inevitable future that we were in the Kingdom Come as an Elseworld story. They did, I think it was Thy Kingdom Come. It was an event that they did with some of the heroes we were familiar. They were children of heroes that we knew, and they spotlighted them and did kind of a spin-off series that wasn't nearly as strong as Kingdom Come. They kind of beat it to death before they finally left it alone. Thankfully enough, it was like one of those great stories that should have been left where it was. But they went all in at one point, really trying to invest heavily in that future just because it was so popular and the book sold so well. This is definitely a top 10 story of all time. I would definitely say if you've seen Alex Ross's covers at any point, just to see a book that he has so painstakingly done, and it holds up extremely well after all these years. It looks even better, like I said, in an absolute type format, just blown up on that page, on that beautiful glossy paper that they use and oversized. It just brings it out so well. I just read the digital copy of the original series. I know they remastered everything for the anniversary edition, the 20-year anniversary edition they did. So even if digitally, you probably want to get that one, because I know, like, reading the lettering in it wasn't the best quality, but this was the older book that they made a digital copy of. So the remastered edition would probably be the way you would want to go, and when getting any type of edition of it, just to ensure that you get the best edition of it, if it's even physical or digital. Just because, especially to Kingdom Come is one of those books that it's an older book. Back then, still printing wasn't fully as digital and automated there. So, just like most books, older books that you get digitally, sometimes the quality is not going to be nearly as good as, per se, like if you buy a current issue of a series nowadays. Everything is pretty digital, pretty much printing done digitally. The files are done, if I can talk, done mainly with computers, the artwork and everything else. So it's so much sharper and crisp. So if you get something like a digital edition, they're so much higher quality. But these older books, if you get those, older scans, they're not going to be nearly as good. So definitely look out for and I've seen them most, places, the digital ones anyway, that they have the updated 20th anniversary edition, which I'm probably going to have to buy that at some point, because like I said, I bought these digitally. Like, this is one of the first stories when I start switching over my collection to digital that I bought way back then, and I haven't refreshed it, but I do want to see how good, especially because like some of the lettering especially made it hard to read in parts that probably on the newer edition are way clear on that. But definitely, this is, if I would have to give this any rating, this is a definite 10 out of 10 must-buy type story. Get it any way possible. If you're want a centerpiece and you can find the absolute edition, get it. It's a must-get. It's probably going to be pricey, but it would be well worth it. If not, get the 20th anniversary edition. Like I said, physical, digital, however you can get it to read this story. It is, like I said, it is definitely, you're seeing the heroes. They're, much older on in life. They've been, relationship dynamics have changed from what we've known in the comics, or even what we see in the comics now. The story still resonates 22 years later after it was originally released. The world things in the world have changed that it doesn't look like so far-fetched that we could get to some crazy events, especially, I'm not trying to get political, but just how the political climate is now. And if once you read the story, you kind of understand to be like, wow, this is kind of like a metaphor of what's going on currently. So it is even more relevant now maybe than it was even 22 years ago when it was originally written, which is just, it's crazy for a story like that. But good stories can do that. They can be relevant in multiple periods of time, and, and they just hold up. And this story holds up extremely well. That's really all I got for you guys. Like I said, this is just one of those few stories that I personally feel. Not everyone might feel that way about Kingdom Come, but I feel like it's always, to me, is a true masterwork in a true sense of fully, just not comic book writing, but just as a creative process with all the parts included. It is just a beautiful book to look at, a stunning story to read, and just an overall pleasant experience. So definitely, if you haven't, check it out. You can find me over at comicbooksavant.com. Always go to the website first and foremost if you want to know anything that's going on with the podcast. We have the YouTube channel, which I spoke about earlier. We've been going strong this year. Like I said, I rolled it out late last year, early into this year. It is literally, I want to say now it's like over 40 videos out on the YouTube channel. So definitely it's worth checking out. It's content that I don't do here. Like I do want a lot of one-offs kind of like this, but shorter. I do have the Comic Book Collector's Guide series that I started up. That's exclusively a thing over on YouTube. So if you're getting into comic collecting and you're new to this and you found this podcast and you want to know kind of like where to start, that's for you. The first episode has been released at the Comic Book Collector's Guide. I'm really proud of it. So definitely, check it out. And it's not just for if you're a beginner, it's for just anyone that's interested in comics as a hobby and want to know more about it as a hobby and things you need to know. Things you might need to look into that you might not be aware of. So, the tagline for the podcast and just for what is Comic Book Savant is that it's the podcast for the serious comics fan. And it's no classification on that you have to be a longtime comics fan to be a serious comics fan. You just have to enjoy the hobby. That's what this is about at its core, is about relating to all comics fans, no matter if you're new, old, young, race, creed, whatever. If you're just a comics fan, this is made to be a resource for you. And I hope that is what I portray in what I've put out. But again, that's something I'm doing over on the YouTube channel. It has its own playlist, so you can check that out. The second episode will be coming out shortly. If it's not out already, I'm trying to remember. I'm between audio and videos that I'm doing. I can't even remember what I have scheduled to come out when, so it might actually be out by the time you hear this. So stop over to, again, youtube.com/Comic Book Savant and check out the Comic Book Collector's Guide. Really good series that I'm doing there. But that's all I have for you for this episode as well. Check out my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network, InStockTrades.com, as well as DCBService.com. And I will see you guys next time for another episode of Comic Book Savant. You guys take care and have a good week. See you soon.